I wanna be the very best, like no one ever was. To catch them is my real test. To train them. Wait, what? You're not a Pokemon? Well, fuck you then. What is going on, guys? This is Dobbs here, bringing you another Pokemon video. And in this video, I'm going to show you the top 10 biggest Pokemon knockoffs that you probably will ever see. But before we start, I want to show you guys this really cool app for the upcoming Pokemon games called Sun and Moon Amino. It's a community app where you can join public chats with people from all around the world, where you can follow cool people, post a blog for everyone to see, or even discuss about Sun and Moon topics. But probably the best part about this app is that it's all about Pokemon Sun and Moon. Now you'll have an app for when you want to see Pokemon Sun and Moon news, Sun and Moon Pokemon, or even just a place to talk about the new games. The app is available on iOS and Android, and all you have to do is search Sun and Moon Amino. So be sure to download the app and take part in my poll for which starter Pokemon you're going to pick. Let's see which starter wins. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. Starting off this list, we have Pokemon Stadium. Yeah. Now back in the day when the Nintendo 64 was just making its first debut, Pokemon Stadium changed the way we looked at Pokemon. With real 3D models, it was such an awesome game to experience for the first time. It was so good, in fact, that bootleg versions of the game were flooding the black market, one of them being, well, Pokemon Stadium. This Pokemon bootleg was made for the Super Nintendo and only featured two modes, Arcade and Versus. Both modes included 12 playable Pokemon that you probably will recognize. I mean, who can forget about Dogus, or even Daggett? It's kind of funny when you think about it. Whoever developed this game straight up took the title of Pokemon Stadium, but when it came to the names of the Pokemon, they were like, nope, that's where I draw the line. Along with these hilariously bad names, the moves were even worse. We had Earthquake Wave, Revert to Life, Sand Splash, and personally my favorite, Hypnosis Genesis, which is kind of a badass name. But anyways, on the bright side, at least the developer had a little originality when it came to the battling. You had two options when being attacked by your opponent, Defend or Evade. Defend was just random luck and determined how much damage you would take. Evade, on the other hand, brought up a slider where you try to land your arrow in the middle area, which is actually pretty cool. Next up, we have the Demi Children, also known as Shin Megami Tensei Devil Children, which is a pretty wild name for a children's game, but whatever. Now, unlike number 10, Demi Children was an actual game created by the same developers who made Persona 3, which, if you didn't know, was a game where you control a group of high school students who activate their special powers by, well, something that's very stupid. It surprises me this was actually allowed for a PlayStation game, even if it was rated M. But anyways, getting back to Demi Children, just like the mainstream Pokemon games, these games came in two versions, the Red Book and the Black Book. The background behind the series follows demon-human hybrids called Devil Children who journey from Japan to the demon world. Just like Pokemon, these kids were allied by monsters that would join their party and help guide them to the end. But the way you capture these monsters is what probably killed the game. You didn't battle and weaken them in order to capture them. It was more of a, hey, yeah? You wanna tag along with us? Yeah, sure. Okay, cool. And that was it. Pretty lame. But what did you expect from a Pokemon knockoff that came from the same people who made Persona 3? Moving on. Coming at number 8, we have Dinosaur King. Now you're probably noticing a pattern in this list. Hilariously said by Dorkly, if you take Pokemon and replace the monsters with another entity, someone will give you a bag of money and your own franchise, which is pretty accurate when you think about it. Now in this case, if you took Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! And Jurassic Park and blended them all together, you'll get what's called Dinosaur King. In this universe, the dinosaurs were basically the Pokemon, and the cards that hold the dinosaurs were basically the Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards. Like really? Was this thought of while taking a shower? This is probably one of the most bizarre knockoffs of Pokemon that I've ever seen. But that's not even the funniest part about this TV show. The main character, Max, was voiced by the same actress who played Ash in Pokemon. On top of that, the goofy criminals, like Team Rocket from Pokemon, sound very similar to Jesse and James. Here, just listen for yourself.
So what do you guys want with us?
Well, that's for us to know and for you brats to find out, isn't it? But if you ever mess with us again, you will find out. Let's go.
Coming!
Well, she was really weird.
But in all seriousness, I remember coming across this TV show when I was just a kid, and it wasn't that bad, even though it only lasted for 49 episodes. Next up, we have, are you ready? Li Dian Hong Bi Ki Kao Shan Shou. Yeah, I have no idea what I just said. Now, in this glorifying bootleg, the game is basically a pirated version of Pokemon Yellow and Fire Red put together. And apparently this is a higher quality version of a Pokemon bootleg. I mean, check this gameplay out. Yeah, I don't really see the high quality in this. Not to mention that the soundtrack is terrible. But anyways, it has its similarities to Pokemon Yellow, like starting out with Pikachu and being able to obtain all the first generation starter Pokemon. But also it has its differences. Listing a few, your Pokemon are able to evolve in the middle of a battle. All the Pokemon who evolve through trade instead evolve at level 40. And you're able to capture an Ivysaur in the Cerulean Cave, which is kind of random. But for the most part, it seems like an okay game, but the soundtrack is god awful. Coming at number 6, we have Dragon Warrior Monsters. Now, it's common knowledge that Dragon Quest has been around longer than Pokemon, but this particular spinoff didn't see light until the Pokemania era had already begun. In the original Dragon Quest, you fight against monsters as a human, but in Dragon Quest Monsters, you guessed it, you use your monsters to battle. Unlike the first Pokemon game, in Dragon Quest Monsters, capturing a monster was a lot more complicated than tossing a Pokeball. You could easily lure the basic ones with meat, but if you wanted a super rare one of your own, you had to hatch it, and that meant hours and hours of monster breeding. So moving on to the main goal of the game, the goal was to travel around various levels defeating bosses to unlock more and more warp gates until you reach the tournament. The tournament being the Elite Four of the game. Now, it probably didn't help that Pokemon Yellow was released 13 days before this game, because in Dragon Warrior Monsters, your monsters actually followed you around, which, like we all know, your Pikachu did the exact same thing in Pokemon Yellow. Now, just like any Pokemon knockoff, in this game another main goal of yours was to capture and train all the monsters. But what really killed it for most people was the terrible storage system. You simply had no space. And even if you were to somehow catch all the monsters, a lot of them would start to hate and disobey you for not battling with them. But overall, it was a pretty good game, even if it was a Pokemon knockoff. Coming at number 5, we have Choco Vaders. Now, back in the early 2000s in Japan, there was a line of alien figurines who came packaged inside hollow balls of chocolate. These collectible monsters were based off real urban legends that included abduction stories and UFO sightings. Oh, and even sci-fi movies. One of them being Yukao, which is a knockoff of the famous alien E.T. Another one being Yusei, which was based off a real alien report where 3 small fairies supposedly broke into an old woman's house and messed with her Christmas decorations, which is pretty funny. To help promote the sales of these figurines, the creators took advantage of the Pokemon craze and decided to release a Game Boy game which revolved around collecting and battling with these monsters. In the game, the monsters also featured a rare form, visually identical, but with upgraded abilities and stats, which is basically an evolution from Pokemon, but at a smaller scale. Now, the reason why Choco Vaders never made it to the Americas was because of the Kinder Surprise Law. This law was passed in 1938, which prohibits the sales of chocolate egg candies containing a toy in them, which is understandable, but still, these aliens were pretty sweet, no pun intended. Coming at number 4, we have Pokemon Crystal, Vietnamese version. Now, throughout this list, I've shown you knockoffs that were put on here for just being plain unoriginal, kind of cool, and noteworthy. But I haven't shown you a knockoff that is just plain hilarious. That's when Pokemon Crystal Vietnamese comes in. This bootleg probably has the worst English translation of any bootleg of all time. I mean, just starting off, after you get your first Pokemon, one of the professors comes up to you and says, "Derp, drug bag, fuck." And yeah, the whole game is like this. In this game, the Pokemon are called elves, and the trainers are called coaches. And who can forget about Silver, who goes by Trashy Man? But probably the funniest mistranslation in the entire game are the 2 words "put in," which for some reason translates to fuck. So every time you put an item in your pocket, it says your item, and then the words "bag fuck." Honestly, I think doing a playthrough of this game would be hysterical, but nonetheless, this bootleg was too good to pass up. So that's why it's number 4 on this list. For number 3, we have Monster Rancher. Less than a month after Digimon made its debut, a new monster-filled franchise came into existence, which was Monster Rancher. Now, a lot of these Pokemon knockoffs are on this list for the wrong reasons, but Monster Rancher, on the other hand, is actually a pretty decent game. Now just like Pokemon, in Monster Rancher you caught and trained monsters and eventually battled with them, but this game had kind of a different feel to it. Not only leveling up your monsters gave you high rank and fame, it also gave you access to rare creatures. The only drawback to this game was that if you level up your monster to the max rank, it would die, which is kind of anticlimactic. I mean, if my first level 100 Pokemon just flat out fainted and never came back, I would probably throw my Game Boy across the room. But anyways, there was a feature to freeze your monsters so that you could battle with them later against your friends in versus mode. But probably the coolest highlight of the game was the random monster generator. You could randomly spawn monsters by putting in various sources of media. For example, you could put a Blink 182 CD in the PlayStation and get a random monster out of it, which was really cool. For runner-up, we have Telothane 1. Now back in 2000, Telothane had just came out a few years after Pokemon. This game was a monster collecting RPG where you fought and leveled up your partners. This game took place in the year 2020, where it became possible to travel to the Dingy world using your cell phone. It's a pretty far-fetched plot, but back in that era, the Nokia cell phone was a huge deal. Now the reason why I put this title so high in this list is not because of the game itself, but because of the knockoff that knocked off this game and Pokemon at the same time. It's basically a triple Inception knockoff. So the game that bootlegged Telothane went by the name of Pokemon Diamond and Jade. Since Telothane had two versions, Power and Speed, Diamond and Jade were made respectively. These two pirated games fooled a ton of people. Part of the reason why is because of the cleverness of the creator. The developer created two fake Pokemon for the boxes to pose as the signature legendary for each game. But the thing is, these two box art Pokemon were non-existent inside the game. So basically clickbait 101 in 2000. These two fake Pokemon games really damaged the reputation for Telothane, which is why they didn't have a chance in the Pokemania market. Not to mention that the main character was basically a Sandslash, and this knockoff Mew was downright creepy. But for the fact that this knockoff was knocked off, I chose Telothane for number 2 on this list. And for number 1, the biggest knockoff of Pokemon, in my opinion, is it's not Digimon, it's RoboPunk. Now this game is borderline plagiarism because of how much they copied Pokemon Red and Blue. It's like the developers didn't even try to hide the fact that they were blatantly copying Pokemon. Their attempt at fun with originality fell into a quick cash grab. Right when you start the game, it looks exactly like Pokemon. The buildings, the towns, and even the characters look alike. I mean, at least they created new monsters, like this toilet or this monster truck, because that's exactly what 10-year-olds want to catch and train. They even use a Pokédex-like way to describe each of their monsters. And the title screen? Don't even get me started. The developers tried to squeeze in a few unique aspects to the game, but only in ways that made it completely useless and complicated. For example, the RoboPins don't evolve automatically. You have to collect energy balls from battling monsters, and then take it back to the laboratory and have the professor do it for you. Basically, if you want to play a Pokemon game and have no fun, catch a monster named Screwy, and overall die a little inside, play RoboPunk. Oh, and did I mention that the final bosses are called the Elite 8? Yeah, freaking ridiculous. So there you go, the top 10 biggest Pokemon knockoffs. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Be sure to leave a like if you did, I appreciate it a ton. And also, if you're enjoying the channel, be sure to subscribe. And if you want to follow me on Twitter for fan interactions, video updates, and other cool stuff, follow me at Ethan Dobbs. And for the question of the day, which game do you think is the biggest Pokemon knockoff? Be sure to leave it down below in the comments. I can't wait to see you guys have in mind. And I'll see y'all next time. See ya.